Hey there, Pisces. How you doing? So it's been a while, and I just wanted to check in and give you a forecast for the next 2 weeks. So this forecast period is taking us from the full moon in Libra right the way through to the new moon in Taurus. So that's from the 13th of April right through to the 27th of April. And this is just for you as a Piscean person or someone with Pisces rising. This should really, really resonate. Now, if this is the first time you come to the channel, hi, my name is Louisa Tanner-Munson. Thank you so much for finding me. This channel, Feel Good Astrology, is about sharing intuitive astrology. I'm definitely intuitive, that's for sure, but it's intuitive astrology delivered in such a way that it creates a sense of choice or perspective or possibility. You know, lots of astrology can be a bit fatalistic and saying, "Oh, this is going to happen and this is what you must do." I don't really want that to come across. You know, from my perspective, I'm looking at how you can heal, how you can understand the natural flows and make choices according to that. So that's where I'm coming from. If this is, you know, a repeat time, if you've been here before, then thank you so much for coming back. I really, really appreciate it. So anyway, let's dive right in. What I've got to do is bring up the slides. I've got the slides, and let's take you through what this next 2 weeks forecast is going to look like. So the first thing to appreciate is that, you know, the full moon that's coming up on the 13th of April, it's in the sign of Libra. And, you know, if you look at the moon, you know, the full moon it's full and illuminated. So life seems much busier around those times. And, you know, the flow of energy around that time seems to be maximized. It's a time when we live the results of what we've been thinking about. You know, everything seems to manifest and come true. Even the things we don't want to happen necessarily. And then as we go through this 2-week period, the moon appears to be getting darker and darker and darker and kind of disappearing from view. So when we come to the new moon in Taurus, you know, there is no illumination. You know, all the illumination has kind of been stripped away, and we're back into the darkness. We're back into our internal magic. So, you know, I think we can plan things with the moon, absolutely. And during the full moon, we tend to be very aware of all external feelings, external intuition, and the external sort of synchronicities of life. And as we go through this waning phase, because that's what it's called, it's waning when the moon's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. What's actually happening is we're connecting into the darker, you know, to the inner, to the unconscious. And so we're less aware of what's going on, but we are more aware of what's going on internally. And you'll see this at the third quarter point. So I will, you know, point out, you know, the times when we're sort of half illuminated, half dark, and how we can prepare for that. You know, a lot of, you know, and I practice this myself around the time of the new moon, you know, the ideal position to be in is to strip back all of those things that you've been talking about, like I must do this, I must do that, blah 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 blah. You know, it's a time over this waning moon forecast just to let go, just completely let go of all those things that are preoccupying yourself. Now, along the way, you might come up, you know, and realize there are some things that are on your mind, but that they are really, really necessary. Well, you can hold on to those. But this whole period is about calming your nervous system, slowing down, going deep inside, so that around the time of the new moon and before we start waxing again, as the moon gets bigger and bigger and bigger after the 27th of April, that we've got a lovely, like, clear space to plant all of our new intentions in. So that's where we're coming from here. So let's apply this now to the diary version of this next 2 weeks ahead. So you can see that we've got the full moon in Libra on the 13th of April, and we've got the new moon in Taurus on the 27th of April, 2 weeks later. This yellow square in the middle shows where the third quarter point happens. So we're at the, like, we're equally as light as we are dark, illuminated versus sort of hidden intuition. And so that's a real sort of a breaking point for us where things change. And you'll see within this week ahead that the first week seems to have a lot more going on for it, and the second week seems a lot calmer. So that's interesting because, you know, the first week and we're still very consciously aware of the noise outside of ourselves. It's very sort of externalized, and it's as if we're having to tame the energies of the astrology. And so what we've got here, first of all, on the 13th of April, one thing I haven't put in is that Venus goes direct. And this is an absolute godsend, because Venus has been, between December, the 6th of December, and right now, we've had either Mercury, Mars, or Venus in a retrograde position, apart from, say, 5 days in between the end of February and the beginning of March. So these are the three personal planets who are like working on our mind, our hearts, and our ability to take action and defend ourselves and be vital. And so one or two of them have been retrograde at the same time. Sometimes we've just got one. Right now, we've just got Venus. She's right at the tail end of this retrograde. But since the 6th of December, it's felt very hard sluggish for a lot of people, because we're not used to having these very personal retrogrades going on one after the other with really no respite. Like I said, we had I think 5, possibly 6 days of grace in between. And so this has been really hard. It's been really working on our inner personality and how we view ourselves. Excuse me. And you may well have found that the things that you normally breeze through and find really, really easy, i.e. to easily know the next thing to do and to take action, to be able to easily sit down and apply yourself to something, and to know what really lights you up. To me, it's felt like we've been on this process of rediscovery, kind of realizing that maybe we've been too busy, we've needed to calm down, we've needed to be quiet. It's a time that has really brought out some very different thoughts within us all. So, what's significant about this date is from the 13th of April. This is the first time in a really, really long time when all three of them have been going direct. And we're not going to be bothered by this sort of bombardment of retrograde activity for quite some time yet. So this is great. This feels like a welcome new change and a new start, so that we can really start to feel a sense of speed, a reconnection of our passion, a reconnection to our heart, and a reconnection to our minds. So I don't think you're going to be as vacant as you might have felt in recent times. Now, straight after, we've got Saturn in a conjunction to the North Node. And, this is when it's exact. Obviously, Saturn is in a conjunction with the North Node throughout this whole period, because Saturn moves very slowly, as does the North Node. And so, to me, what's really coming up is, you really reap what you sow. So any old sort of loose ends that you haven't really dealt with, now is the time to get them done, really, truly, because it just feels like that it will be noticed, and it's time to fix what you haven't put your mind to. And then as we come to Wednesday, and you'll see there's so much more in this first week, we've then got 3 planetary changes over 4 days. So first of all, Mercury goes into Aries. Mercury in the sign of Pisces isn't very strong. And of course, he's been retrograde in Pisces. And so, our minds have been very unfocused and quite dreamy, quite imaginative. And we might have, especially with the retrograde, we might have been bringing into mind some of our worst nightmares, because we're not able to focus our thoughts so brilliantly. Now that Mercury is going into Aries, I think we're going to feel very insightful, be able to move forwards with some pace, and be able to communicate at a much deeper level. Then we've got Mercury in a conjunction with Neptune. That's the first Mercury-Neptune conjunction, actually, where they're both in the sign of Aries. It's a whole new start in terms of getting your creativity out there and really being able to articulate what is coming from your sense of spiritual connection and spiritual leadership. Then on the 18th, Mars goes into Leo. This is fantastic, because that was where Mars was before he went retrograde. Over the next short period of time until he gets to where he was when he went retrograde, we're going to be starting to pick up pace. And I think it's going to be really, really quite useful. And we'll come back into our sense of natural vitality. And speaking of Mars and his retrograde, he went retrograde at 6 degrees in the sign of Leo. And so what I think, like we are on the home stretch, in terms of our vitality. Mars shows how easy it is for us to defend ourselves and also stand in our power. And so, he went retrograde at 6 degrees Leo. He hasn't gone past that. So, he's going forwards. What it means is Mars is currently in his retrograde shadow. But he'll be coming out of that around the 2nd of May. But we are gaining speed. We are coming back into our power. And so this whole period, right from, I really think from when Mars goes into Leo on the 18th of April, we will start to feel a lot stronger in ourselves. And hopefully, if you've been ill, I've been definitely ill during this time, you'll start to be making your recovery, which I'm really excited by. On the 19th, the sun is moving into Taurus. And also Mars is making a trine to Neptune. Now, this is a really creative trine. So we've got Mercury in a conjunction with Neptune, Mars in a trine with Neptune. So Neptune is really getting to test out his creative, intuitive, spiritual powers in the sign of Aries. If you listened to my AI voiced Neptune in Aries video recently, I lost my voice, so hence I use an AI voice. What was really coming out is this sense that we're coming into a time of spiritual entrepreneurship and that we are standing in our leadership. We are coming into a time of compassionate leadership. And so with Mars in the trine and Mercury in the conjunction, I really think in this week, if you are on the pathway to leadership and to tending to your flock or helping a group of people, you're really going to start to find your voice. And then on the 20th of April, this is a really great and useful energy. Venus in a conjunction to the North Node. We are coming into our hearts in terms of our overall mission in life. And the 3 sextiles are going on, are very, very helpful. Sextile energy is quick, it's easy, it's supportive. They are like the building blocks of great activities. So if you've got enough building blocks, you'll be able to create a wall, you'll be able to create some kind of support. So I see the 20th of April as being particularly strong. And then on the 21st, when we've got the third quarter, this halfway between being illuminated and coming into the mystery of life, we've got the sun in a square to Mars. And then there's a bit of a challenge for our vitality. We may well be feeling quite pushed, quite irritated. We're wanting to move ahead, and it may well be that we're trying to slow ourselves down at the same time. So that's an interesting day of kind of parallels, like the idea that our image is about one thing, and yet our Mars is gaining speed and gaining energy, and it's time to push ahead. Now, this is also interesting because as you'll see in a second, as I bring up your Pisces chart, the sun is making a square to Mars, but a couple of days later is also making a square to Pluto. And we're coming into this really tight T-square that's going to challenge us and I think bring the best out in us as well. You'll see there's not much going on. And then the last couple of things I really want to point out is we've got Venus in a conjunction to Saturn, super strong energy, and then the new moon in Taurus. And of course, the new moon in Taurus is ruled by Venus. So Venus is a very important planet as we're coming up to that new moon. So let's have a look to see what this actually looks like on your charts. But before I do that, let me just say a big thank you to everybody that supports this channel. This is a list of current supporters and also some people that really helped me to support it last year. I appreciate you all, and whether you are supporting this channel by becoming members or giving me donations or however, I get lovely emails from people as well. Just thank you. I really, really appreciate it. So Pisces, with these charts then, I've created 3 charts, one for the full moon in Libra and how that's looking in your chart. Then I've got one for the third quarter point, the midpoint between the 2 weeks. As you can see, there's a lot more going on in the first week. and then one for the new moon in Taurus right at the end of this period. And of course, that's when my next 2-week forecast will be launched. So you'll see, what I'm going to do is just flick through the 3 diagrams, and you can see how the energies are patterned. So you'll see this first one, we've got this sort of energy of a grand square. Now, it's not exactly a grand square. I've really put it in to illustrate. We're almost there. We're ever so slightly out. But I've applied this because as the moon is coming into this full moon, it makes an exact square with Mars, and as it's leaving, it makes an exact square with Pluto. But it is really at that midpoint between the 2 squares, and so this is a really, really, as you can imagine, with squares, you've got 4 things that appear to be working against each other. There's no real flow. There's these kind of jagged edges, if you know what I mean. So these formations, these big squares, really create a strong dynamic. And so it's these squares that we're really starting this 2-week period off with. And of course, it's a full moon, and full moons are particularly charged anyway. And then as we're coming into, if you watch the moon here, the moon carries on moving, and at the 3rd quarter point has come around here. And that's when you really are seeing this T square between the sun is in the middle with Mars on one end and Pluto on the other. Now, one thing to also pay attention to is the fact that the last square that we've got, the last chart with this last T square, this is at the time of the new moon in Taurus. So the sun and the moon are really sort of like moving, together into the sign of Taurus. But we've got this exact opposition between Pluto and Mars. Now, it's unusual for a Pluto and Mars opposition to stick around so long. Usually they're done and dusted within a couple of weeks, but towards the end of October last year, we had Mars in the sign of Cancer and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and they went into their last exact opposition in those signs. And then and that was on the 3rd of November, just before Pluto moved into Aquarius for the last time. And then they had another exact opposition on the 3rd of January. And because both Pluto and Mars have been going retrograde, they're now actually making their last and final opposition together of this particular set. Pluto's a very, very slow moving planet. He's going to be in this part of the chart for the next 20 odd years. Whereas Mars is going to come around to this point again in around 2 years. So we will get another opposition between these two at this particular place in about 2 years' time. But Pluto and Mars in an opposition is strong. Mars is very much about your level of vitality and your will to be yourself and your will to stand strong and know who you are and to be able to communicate your boundaries and to take action and to really know what you are active about, what you're firm about. It helps you go to war if you want to. It can be the seat of your anger, but more importantly, it can be the seat of your very natural assertiveness. So not necessarily aggressive, but it can help you be yourself and help you not be taken advantage of. Now, with Pluto, which is very much about control, and Pluto often shows in our charts as external controls that are impacting us, like powers from afar. And they can sometimes show, or Pluto can sometimes show up as a hidden power, a secret power, a power that you feel almost like you can't get out of, like it could be a religious power or a government power. It could also be the controls that your parents put on you or any kind of authority. But it can also show the levels that you will go to as an adult to have things your own way. The Pluto energy at its most is like a megalomaniac. It is absolutely going to get his own way. But, in a birth chart with Pluto, like really wanting his own way versus your body and your spirit and your soul really wanting just to be yourself and to be able to take clear action. It's really kind of pulling at us. And I think, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, since October, many of us have been going through this internal and quite agonizing like desire to take action on things. And every time we're taking action on things, it feels like we're being impeded. Something is there to stop us, something external. Now, of course, I actually believe as above, so below. What's on the outside of us is also going on the inside of us, which you may or may not subscribe to. So what might be actually quite helpful to understand is, on the one hand, you've had this desire to be able to move forwards in life and to take action. And on the other hand, you're self-sabotaging. That's the Pluto, the internalized Pluto. It's where you're trying to keep yourself safe. And, there's a side of you that isn't exactly engaged with the, Mars's desire to get out there. So this is an ongoing battle, and it's coming to the end on the 27th of April. And thereafter, it's going to get easier because Mars is going to continue and Pluto is going to pretty much stay there. So they will come out of this pattern. But what's significant, and that's actually why I've highlighted Sun square Mars, Sun square Pluto, and the Pluto-Mars opposition, because these are such big, strong energies. But pretty much throughout this 2-week period, we are challenged by life and also challenged by ourselves. And this is the big showdown. This is the big showdown where we finally see who is actually holding you back. And a bit like a Scooby-Doo video, you pull off the mask expecting to see, I don't know, maybe someone from the WEF or the UN or something. And actually, or Trump or whoever you see as being, the cause of all your woes. But actually, you pull the mask off and you might actually see yourself in full self-sabotage mode. But we're getting to the core of it. We're really finding out why we're holding ourselves back. Is it through fear of achieving, through fear of being discovered, through fear of, I don't know. But this is a really big discovery that you're most likely going to come into. Yeah, so with this full moon in opposition to the Sun and Chiron, it's really forcing you to take action, any action that you haven't yet taken to resolve your feelings of crushed self-esteem, where a pain from the past hasn't really been moved beyond, where you're still working to the limits of your lack of confidence, so like if you believe you're only capable of this is all you're going to achieve. And so you're going to be pushed out of your comfort zone and shown that actually you're much more capable than you give yourself credit for. And, life is going to be pushing you and it will keep reminding you to try harder and be more. And that may well be painful. The moon is going to be going through this 8th house of yours. And that also has a lot to do with the expectations of others. So you may well find that other people have got a say. Other people are saying, oh God, look at you, why haven't you done more? Or why are you still at this point? Other people are likely to show up as the aggravatory factor that gets things moving. Now, the fact that these are in a square to Pluto, it's almost showing, yes, you need to take action, and yet there's something really strong and possibly invisible that's holding you back. Pluto in your 12th house really does show hidden fears and fears that you can't necessarily really easily see. And then Mars down here is starting to feel creative and strong and really wanting to enjoy himself. So it's interesting. There's this desire to really get out there and to really put, pen to paper, to really let yourself flow forwards fast. And yet there's some kind of old fear that's holding you back. If you can get to the bottom of that fear, there's something that you can work on. And I think you can get some movement. This is very powerful. This is bringing us to our knees for a reason. It's bringing us the pattern so rawly that we finally see it, and more importantly, we see the impact of what it costs us to not heal ourselves. Now, what's really great about this is we've got these beautiful sextiles, we've got this lovely trine here, all of these blue aspects are holding so many patterns together. So, for instance, there's great ways where we're ready to take innovation. And, right now it feels like you can be innovative within your local community. Like you've got friends, you've got connections with people who are possibly more advanced or possibly just a bit freer than you are, and they're really calling you to connect in with your personality, to connect in with all the great things you've done, all the things that you are. They're really kind of pulling you and reminding you, but what about your creativity? What about your life's purpose? What about the way you communicate? They're really working on you in a great way. And then Mars is also encouraging you to be yourself. So ultimately, I think this is about being yourself and allowing yourself to feel free enough. So again, in terms of this great big square here, how can you feel free to be yourself? Like completely free, where you're really not worried about how people think about you. It really feels like quite a strong calling. So as we get into the middle of this period, around the third quarter on the 21st, the square between Pluto and Mars and the Sun are really at their most intense. And in particular on the 21st, the moon is also in a conjunction with Pluto. So the 21st will feel a little bit like this full moon. There will be a real sort of intensity of feelings. And you might get an even bigger clue as to what fear is holding you back. And most of these fears come from childhood or come from an experience where something happened outside of your control and you're trying to prevent it from happening. But of course, here's the reality. We don't know it's going to happen again. We really don't know it's going to happen again. And you're judging your future based on your past pain. Can you imagine how much more powerful your future would be if you could not judge it on past pain, but judge it on, I don't know, future success or future possibilities? So it really is about, managing your mind in a new way. And the great thing is, by this time, Mercury is in the sign of Aries, really moving forwards. Beautiful trine between Mercury and Mars, really helping you take action, by which time Mars is in your 6th house. So, it feels like Mercury is able to communicate to you about your money and like appreciate who you are and your internal resources. And Mars is like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and get ready. There's things to be done. And so I really think the 21st is really moving things forward for you. And then in this last week, as Mars goes into the opposition with Pluto on the day of the new moon is a time of new possibilities. It's a time when we're birthing something new. And here, I think you're birthing a new sense of belonging within the community that you live in, within the ideas of what's natural to you. So, for instance, it feels like there's a new start, a new way of seeing your life. Like the 3rd house really does tell us how our life is, like what are the rules, how neighborhoods work, what the general consensus is on politics. And, however, like there is a norm. I really think the 3rd house has a lot to do with norming. How do your neighbors behave? How do your siblings behave? How do your cousins and this, that, and the other behave? And your work colleagues? There are norms of society. And to be fair, it feels to me like you're resetting your relationship to the community. Now, is it that you're norming in with them? I don't think it is. I think you're creating a new possibility to be yourself, even if you don't seem very normal. So, like, I guess the question to you that I want to pose is, how can you be connected to the people around you, even if you don't have the same aspirations as them? And that, I think, is the invitation to you right now, is to be so comfortable with yourself that other people are comfortable with you. So, for instance, if you're being yourself, but knowing, no one's going to like me the way I am, to be fair, that's, I think, an indication that you're not really that comfortable being yourself. But if you could absolutely be so comfortable being yourself that you are including yourself in decisions. You're not always thinking of other people first, you're putting yourself first. I think then your community will start to put you first and start to take the time to understand you from a new perspective. So I really think this new moon in Taurus is going to help you feel a little bit more peace within your local environment, and of course that's going to have great ramifications in terms of your friends and so on and so forth. Now, that's the end of the general forecast. If you're interested in the career and ambition forecast for your sign, or even the romance or the relationship and connection forecast, then and also you want to support my channel, then you might consider membership, because one of the things that you get each fortnight is you get one of these forecasts. Again, it's for Pisces. In fact, it's for every sign of the zodiac. So for instance, in membership, if you wanted to check out your ascendant sign and your sun sign, or even your moon sign, you can listen to all of those. They're all available to you. There's also a complimentary community hangout each month. In this last month, I've actually had two because I enjoyed it so much and I wanted to connect. There's also an exclusive discount on consultations and courses of 20%. So again, if you are considering having a reading with me, or working with me on a regular basis, this could be quite useful, having a 20% discount. If I do webinars, which I'm going to be doing next month and thereafter, you'll get a 50% discount on all of those, and you'll get invites to things before everyone else does. But it's a little bit extra, so any handouts that I create, they go on this portal space, and also I'm going to be teaching astrology from scratch soon. So that's a new part that's coming in this next month, but really learning astrology from scratch in a group scenario. So, it's entirely up to you if that sounds like your cup of tea. I mean, you might just want it for the forecasts and not for anything else. I know there are some people that use it that way, and you can just drop by every 2 weeks and get those forecasts, or you can immerse yourself with like-minded people and you'll get access to me as well. I don't mean to say that as if I'm some kind of princess, but I don't really get that much time to respond to people actually in comments on YouTube these days. Whereas if you're part of the membership and you want to interact, it's a great place to do that. So it's $22 a month and you get 1 week free trial, so you can give it a go. You just go to www.school.com/feelgoodastrology, and this is a little example of the timeline. So from a couple of cycles ago, this was the forecast, and they all went down for every sign of the zodiac. So that's an option for you. But anyway, hope that was helpful for you. And I hope you have a great 2 weeks coming up, and that, you're coming into that sense of self-acceptance, which I really think this whole forecast was really talking about. And if I can be of any help, and you need a reading, then please do get in touch. All of the details are below in all of my description field. So anyway, loads of love. Have a good one and catch you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.